evening, everybody. We are back, the Safety and the Sportswriter show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe as we get ready to talk to you about the world of sports. Basically, a lot of football to get through tonight, the combines. We got a little basketball. We got a lot of stuff going on. Nate, first of all, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm pretty psyched. Football is never really over, and tomorrow that we get into the drills, and we start seeing these guys run, and we start getting the oohs and the ahs. We've already got the medical done. We've already got a lot of the interviews done, and now it's time to get the guys out on the field and see what they got.
It'll be very interesting. But before we get to that, I want to start with a little college basketball because a longtime record, I guess, is going to be eclipsed very soon by Antoine Davis of Detroit Mercy, taking away Pete Maravich's total points for a career. But as an old school guy, I know it's not getting a lot of coverage, but it's getting enough to just annoy me because the guy played twice as many games as Maravich, played a fifth year when Maravich only played 3 years.
And there's no 3-point line.
Right, exactly.
And half of Maravich's shots were from beyond the arc. So,
and he plays for a small school up in the north. He doesn't play SEC brand ball, and I mean, to even recognize this as a record to me is kind of crazy. I know it's a record, but is it really a record? Is it really a record? Because once you go for a fifth year, I think that takes away the record. What about you?
Yeah, no, I don't even recognize. I can't. You just said the guy's name, and I can't even remember what it is because I don't recognize this guy as being the all-time leader. I mean, Pete Maravich is, and to be honest with you, if Pete Maravich had the 3-point line, we could go back and do the math. He'd have way more points. And like you said, he only played 3 years. The COVID year thing is really screwing things up for a lot of people. The records. I mean, that's one thing, but I mean, I don't really even care about records anymore. But the thing that it's really screwing up things for is high school kids. Mm-hmm. There's no scholarships for a lot of kids in basketball, football, baseball. Because these kids have been there forever. And a lot of them who are seniors could potentially come back for another year, even though they're seniors right now, because that 1 year didn't count, statistically. So this is something that we talked about at the time, and we really dug into it as to how the potential effects of it down the road, and it's starting to happen. Exactly what we said.
Especially when you're talking about basketball. I mean, football, you got to fill out. You got to have 60, 75 players on a major college, maybe 100 players at a major college team. But basketball, I mean, there's only 15 players on the roster?
Yeah, 12 to 15 scholarship, 12 to 15 scholarship players. And, that's the thing is that right now with the transfer portal, guys can go from team to team without having to sit out a year. So there's only so many spots available for these high school kids. And then with the extra COVID year, there's even less.
Yeah, exactly. So that when I heard someone mention that record to me, I said, I got to look this up. And I looked it up, and I said to the guy at the time, I go, did he play a fifth year? He goes, I'm not sure. So I looked it up, and he played 5 years. I mean, he did average over 23 points a game throughout his career. But still.
Yeah, that's good, but it's lesser competition. A, B, it's a longer period of time, 5 seasons, when you're only supposed to be able to play 4, and then it's also the 3-pointer, which Maravich didn't have, and he certainly could shoot from long range. So,
yeah. And this guy, I looked it up. He made about 500 and almost 600 3-pointers in his career.
Yeah, so take away a point for each one of those.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to see what you felt about that, and I'm glad you feel like I feel about it. And now another thing I wanted to get into, because it's keep getting up here, and I just want to strangle these people. Saquon Barkley, again, I understand that the prevailing thought is you never take a running back that high. And we can go, and for the most part, I agree with that. Their careers are the shortest. And the position's been devalued. But here's a guy in 3 of his first 5 years and you take away the two that he didn't do this, he's rushed for over 1,000 yards. Because of his knee injury, he didn't run for 1,000 yards because of the year he had the injury and a year recovering from it. But every other year, he's gotten 1,000 yards, and he has been totally effective. And I looked this up because I could try to compare him. Who would you say is the greatest running back in Giant history? Tiki Barber?
Gosh, you hit me with that out of the blue. I'd have to think about it. But all time running backs, I mean, I think if you're talking about like an entire career, I think you have to probably look at Tiki just because of production. But you think about Joe Morris, you think about
Rodney Hampton.
You're thinking about even Ahmad Bradshaw had a decent career, but I mean, he doesn't. Otis Anderson had a pretty good career, but I definitely think probably you got to look at probably Tiki first, but Rodney Hampton's up there. Joe Morris, he was a Pro Bowler a couple years. He was in the playoffs. He's in the Giants Ring of Honor. I think Joe Morris, Frank Gifford, if you want to go way back, but Tiki Barber, was with the Giants his entire 10-year career. He was a 3-time Pro Bowl selection. He was a first-team All-Pro. He led the NFL in total yards from scrimmage in 2004. He holds the record for the longest rush attempt.
You're looking at Tiki's numbers there, right?
No, but I can pull them up. I'm looking at him now.
If you look at his first 5 years, he had 1,000-yard season,
and that was the last one, the
right.
5th year.
Right.
Yeah, he was. I mean, pretty much his first several years, he was a special teams guy and a third down back.
And then you look at his fumbles, the other side of the ledger. I mean, Saquon Barkley's only fumbled 5 times in his career. Tiki doubled that a couple of times in his season.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, and also you look at the receptions. Tiki has half of what Saquon has put up already. So to call him like a wasted draft choice, a swung and missed pick, is asinine. He's done everything he's been asked to do. It's not his fault that the team around him hasn't been good. And there's no proof that with the instability of the Giants, grabbing a quarterback would have been a better move to make. Because Daniel Jones, who was taken in next year, has struggled just as much.
There's no doubt. And this guy was instant offense, immediately upon being drafted. And you look right now, if you look at, I mean, every single prognosticator's 100 top free agents, Saquon Barkley's in the top 5.
Right.
And I don't care what position you are. If you're a guy who's listed as the top 5 free agents that are available, you're a big time. You've been a big time producer, and that's what he's been. He's been a big time producer since he came in the league. Despite the injury years, he's been absolutely legit. And this is a guy that it didn't take. I mean, Tiki, like we just talked about, it took him some time to adjust to the pro game. It took him some time to become an every down back. Saquon was that from day one, and he's been the face of the franchise. He hasn't gotten in trouble. He's helped them win. And my biggest thing that these guys aren't talking about, the offensive line's been garbage.
Right.
I mean, pretty much the entire time he's been there. I mean, they've been drafting guys, they've been plugging and playing guys. But if you really think about it in totality, the offensive line has been horrible.
Right. Exactly. And so that's why I look at these guys, it's become the narrative. I understand we love the draft and we watch the draft, but I mean, I don't think you and I just sit there and look at the draft and say, you got to plug this quarterback, or you got to get a quarterback, got to get a left tackle. You got to get the best player on your board available when they're available.
Yeah. And he was the best player on their board, and they took him, and he's worked out.
Exactly. It's not his fault. The team has generally sucked up until this year. And thank God, I hope it's not too late. I hope they find a way to bring him back. I hope they find a way to keep Daniel Jones in the family too. And let's go forward with that. But, whatever it is, to call him a bust, to call him a swing and miss is just idiotic, because
it's incorrect.
Yeah, because every fact shows differently.
And he's been a player. I mean, a bust is, we're talking Ryan Leaf. A bust is Jamarcus Russell. A whiff is Jamarcus Russell. It's
Josh
not.
Rosen.
Yeah, Josh Rosen. I mean, we could go on and on and on with these guys that have been drafted high, that have barely seen the field. And if they have seen the field, it's been a lost cause when they've been out there. That's not the case for Saquon. He's been a big-time production guy and, will continue to be in this league as long as he remains healthy.
And as long as we're going over some of the things that happened this week, Carson Wentz got his walking papers.
Yeah, that doesn't shock me. Does that shock you? I mean, Carson Wentz is done in my mind. I can't believe that Washington gave him another shot to be a starter. I think he's a backup at best at this point. The only reason he's a backup is because there's just not really that many good quarterbacks, and he'll probably get signed as a backup. But his days as being signed as the guy and the dude that's supposed to be the starter, they're over.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Now I'm going to take the other side of that. I think one of the most important things for a backup quarterback is to have the right attitude. You're kind of a quasi quarterback coach on the sideline. You're the wide angle lens for that quarterback when he comes to the sideline, and you can see him. You can give him your view on what's going on in the field that he may be missing. Carson Wentz, I mean, I don't know the guy personally, but he does seem to have that bad rap in his locker rooms where guys really don't like him. And it's one thing if the Eagles didn't like him, but you didn't hear a lot of people crying when he left Indianapolis, and you don't hear a lot of people crying when he's leaving the Redskins. So could he really be, embrace that backup role like you need him to do just to play football, or is he going to be a problem?
Would I take him as my backup? I mean, he wouldn't be the first guy I would want to sign. Hell no. I mean, I would take Tyrod Taylor. I would take Chase Daniel. I mean, I'd take a bunch of guys over him just because I feel like he still thinks that he's a starter. So I think what you're saying makes sense. He's not going to embrace the backup role, and he's going to, want to potentially think he's still a starter. I mean, he's not, but will he adjust to that role? I mean, who knows? Only a certain amount of guys can do that. You think about the guy in Kansas City. I mean, he's done a pretty good job of being that guy who's a backup, who helps the number one guy prepare, who's ready when he needs to be, and can win, the 2 out of 4 or the 3 out of 4 if he's called upon to go in there for a 4-week span. And whether Carson Wentz can do that, I don't know. To be honest with you, he's running out of chances real quick.
I think he is running. I mean, you would think the one place he could go and be, or he wouldn't be let to be a distraction would be Kansas City when they need a backup. But actually, I think I know Andy Reid could handle him, but I don't know if he'd be good for that situation. I mean, whoever goes there, you have to know Patrick Mahomes is going to be there for the next 12, 15 years. So you're going to be holding a clipboard for that amount of time. And as long as you're backing him up, and Andy Reid, as long as he's there, Pat Mahomes is his guy. He's not going to make any changes for sure. And why would he? So, I mean,
that's one place I could see him potentially, fitting in, just because he knows right away if he were to go there, he knows he's not the starter. So that might be a spot where he could embrace it and learn to live with it. But, I don't know whether or not that's a guy that's on Andy Reid's and the Kansas City Chiefs radar. I haven't heard of them being interested in him. It'll be interesting to see what his market is. I just, for one, he hasn't played well. Okay. Right. That's number one. You gotta at least play somewhat well to, warrant some people's, desire to get you. And then two, you have to be available.
Right.
And he hasn't been available. He's been injured pretty much consistently throughout the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, even last year, he was on injured reserve for a good chunk of the season. So A, he hasn't played well. B, he's always hurt. And C, he doesn't really seem like he wants to be a backup. So there's 3 strikes right there.
And D, his teammates don't seem to like him.
Yeah, no one likes him. So yeah, he's got a lot of things going the wrong direction for him, and I hope he does catch on somewhere. And I mean, I don't have anything against him, so hopefully he finds a way to resurrect his career as a backup. But we'll see. I mean, we've seen this a couple of times now where these guys have gotten these contracts. You know, Carson Wentz got a big contract when he was in Philadelphia. He got a ton of money. Didn't work out. They moved on from him very quickly. You know, and it's happened before. Jared Goff got a big contract and they moved on from him. Now he's since played very well in Detroit and been a good quarterback in my opinion. But Carson Wentz has not, and he's struggled to find his footing. Now I thought he had a pretty decent year in Indianapolis. You know, the last 2 games, yeah, they weren't that great, but he kind of got the blame for everything there. Did he play bad those last 2 games? Yeah, but I'm not so sure that all of that was his fault. And to be honest, if I were him, I would go to Carolina and I would try and be a veteran on that roster to compete with whoever they bring in and the guys that are already there. That's what I would do if I were him. Frank Reich's there. Frank Reich knows you. Frank Reich knows how to use you. You had your best years in Philly with him and had a pretty decent year numbers wise in Indianapolis with him. So if I was him, that's where I would go.
That's a good idea. That's a really good idea when you think about it. Also, if you're going to go down there, you're playing in a division we talked about last week. That's a mess.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the quarterbacks in that division, and honestly, there's really nobody who's a ton better than him, and he's not good. So, I mean, that's just kind of where that division is at right now. I mean, we got Kyle Trask, we got Desmond Ridder. Neither one of those guys has proven anything. You know, we've got New Orleans, who really has no one. So he's better than their team because they've got 0. So it's like I think the best spot for him would be to go to Carolina. You know, Frank Reich at least knows how to use him and knows what he's good at. And I think that would be his best move to make.
That was one of the best backhanded compliments I've ever heard. You're a piece of crap, but you don't smell so much.
Hey, I learned from the best.
All right, and one other guy before we get into the combine, another guy that's interesting because he struck out 3 different places, Marcus Mariota. And the thing that he has now on his resume that Wentz doesn't is he quit on his team.
Yeah. The end of the year was very strange there in Atlanta. Now the one thing that I will say is we don't know everything. I don't think.
Right.
You know, I have to imagine. You know, Marcus has been a pro since he came in the league. He's been a pro.
A good guy.
He seems like a really good guy. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He's smart. He's a good athlete. He's been a pretty decent quarterback. You know, in Tennessee. You know, he led him to the playoffs a couple of times. He just couldn't get him over the hump, so they moved on. But he kind of took that like a champ. Even when he gave up his role as the starter to Ryan Tannehill, he kind of backed him up there until he moved on to Oakland, which then became Las Vegas. And then, you know, out in Las Vegas, he was a good teammate. He backed up Derek Carr, and when he got out there, you know, via injury or, you know, running special packages, he was pretty effective. I'm not sure what all happened in Atlanta, but I think that Marcus is going to get another chance. I think he's going to get a shot to be a backup, and I don't think anybody's going to bring him in to be a starter after last year. But once again, I don't think you can blame all of the offensive woes in Atlanta on Marcus Mariota. Did he suck at times? Yeah, but I mean, what did they have around him? Not much.
Tell you God's honest truth, I would not mind Marcus Mariota coming up to the Meadowlands and playing back up to Daniel Jones.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, he's got similar skill set.
Exactly.
He can run the ball. He can. You know, he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's a good athlete. He's got. I think that would be a good spot for him.
Yeah, because now you got a competent backup in case something happens to Jones. And let's face facts. Before this year, Jones was very fragile.
Yep.
So I think that would be a great move for the Giants. Bring him in, have a look at him. He's younger. You know, it's not Tyrod Taylor. He doesn't have the health problems Tyrod Taylor seems to have. So I'd love to see him do that. But all right, let's get on to the combine and let's take a look at what the future of the NFL has to hold for us. And let's start in the quarterback position. Of course, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud are the number 1 and 2. No doubt about it. They're probably gonna be the top 2 taken in the draft. And right after that, let's get into the next guys down. Anthony Richardson, you brought him up last week, and you didn't seem to be that impressed by him because you haven't seen enough of him.
Well, I mean, this guy just doesn't have that many starts. I mean, that's my biggest thing with him is, we think back to the guys that have been drafted high that have struggled. Okay. Number one, I'm going to talk about is Mitch Trubisky. That was my biggest thing against him was he didn't have that many starts coming out of North Carolina. And it was kind of all about potential with him. They moved up, took him very, very high. And it was kind of a disaster. And that's kind of my feeling on Anthony Richardson. I mean, this guy just hasn't really started that many games. There's not that big of a body of work. 2020, he played in 3 games. I think he attempted 2 passes. So really, 2021 was the first time he saw the field. He only played in 7 games. He threw 64 passes. Not a real big sample size there. And even last year, he played in 12 games, but it just wasn't. It wasn't like it blew you away with his production. He threw 17 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Probably his biggest, his biggest attribute was his athleticism, being an athlete, being able to run, being able to, throw and run together. He had a couple of games, but I'd say his best game, which is troubling to me, was his first game against Utah. And it was kind of downhill from there. And, the tape is what I look at first and foremost is the tape. Can the guy play? What does he look like against good teams? What does he look like, when they're losing? And, you need him to kind of lead the team back. And I just haven't seen it from him. And, how he's gotten to the point that he's at with being one of the top, at least in rating wise, one of the top 4 quarterbacks. I have no idea because I don't have him anywhere near there. And, there's a lot of guys I like better than him. Hendon Hooker is the one for me. Even with the injury, I like Hendon Hooker way more than I like Anthony Richardson. Hendon Hooker has 2 years under his belt where he played very, very well for Tennessee and led one of the top offenses in the league. And so, I would rather wait for Hooker to get healthy than for Richardson to potentially get better.
The thing about it, and I totally agree with you. I mean, it's all about reps. I mean, I talked about this when we were talking about Tua years ago or a couple last year. I thought what hurt Tua playing in Alabama was he didn't play in the second half of a lot of games. He except playing against teams like Georgia and LSU when they had Burrow, he was on the bench by the sideline by halftime. So you don't see a lot of stuff. And I think you're right. In college, you got to play for at least 3 years a starter or play on a team where really it's built around you and you play in really competitive games. Otherwise, you don't see what these guys are really about.
Right. And that's what I'm saying with Hooker. I mean, he's got 2 years being a solid quarterback in the SEC for Tennessee. And even before that, he started a lot of games for Virginia Tech. And, they struggled a little bit, but he got better. He got a lot better. And I saw that improvement. And this is the guy who could make decisions. The one knock on Hendon Hooker is, Josh Heupel's offense. It's kind of a college offense where it's your first or your second read. There's not a whole lot of finding number 3 or number 4. In fact, there's very little of it. But, I mean, that can be taught. That can be learned. That can be something that somebody like Hendon Hooker, who is a smart guy and who is a good football player, can adapt to and can incorporate in his game. Anthony Richardson, I don't know if he can find 1, much less 3. So I don't see it. I don't understand what the grade is about. I mean, I know he's got a good arm. I know he's fast. I know he's big. I know he's athletic. But is he a good quarterback? Not really.
And we've talked about Will Levis. Neither of us has really been seeing what everybody else has seen in him, I guess. But I guess he's going to go anyways. I'm interested in the next couple here. I don't know much about Aiden O'Connell. What do you know about Aiden O'Connell?
Aiden O'Connell's a very good thrower of the football. This is a kid who started a lot of games. I mean, he's a redshirt senior. This is a dude who can play under center. He can play in the shotgun. He's got pretty decent size. He's 6'3", 215. I've got a lot of game tape on him. He's pretty accurate. Has he got the strongest arm in the world? No, but he's an accurate thrower, and he can place the ball in between the hash marks. He's got a high completion percentage. He's just not one of these athletic guys that we're kind of used to seeing here. But this is a dude who I definitely think somebody may get away with taking him in the draft and having somebody that can maybe not start right away, but play a couple of games his first year and potentially be a decent quarterback. I mean, look at the track record of Purdue quarterbacks in the NFL. It's been pretty good. Kyle Orton, Drew Brees. The list goes on.
Well, Kyle made it, but Kyle didn't make it as a starter. I mean, he was a good backup when he was a backup, but not a great starter. I mean, Drew Brees. Before that, you're going to go way back in their time. But I mean, you think he could project out as a starter down the road, or just a solid backup?
I'm not sure. I mean, I've seen enough out of him to where I think he could get a shot to compete for a starting job. I definitely like him more than I like Will Levis. I definitely like him more than I like Anthony Richardson. I mean, I know these guys supposedly have these big ceilings, but we talk about the NFL game, and it's still primarily pocket passers. I mean, we got some guys that are mixing in some of the RPO stuff and Jalen Hurts of the world and that thing. But I mean, you look at the dudes that are winning games consistently, like Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow. Those guys are doing it from the pocket. So I'm not saying Aiden O'Connell is Joe Burrow, but I am saying that this guy can throw the football, and this guy understands offenses. This guy can get through reads. He's played a lot of games. Like I said, he's a redshirt senior. He's been a starter for a long time. Whether or not I think he can be a starter in this league, I mean, are any of these guys starters in this league? I mean, this is not a very good quarterback draft. I mean, let's just be honest. It's not.
No.
But this guy's, especially the last 2 years, he threw for over 3,700 yards in 2021, probably his best year, honestly. And then last year, things weren't as good, but they just didn't have the receivers that they had the year before. And that to me was why his numbers came down a little bit. But he still, won a lot of games at Purdue. He was healthy. He played in 12 games last year, 12 games this year. Like I said, threw for over 34, almost 3,500 yards in both seasons, and got it done. So I definitely like him more than I like a lot of these other dudes.
What about Stetson Bennett? I know he, as a college player, you weren't high on him to begin with, but I mean, he did win you over a little bit, and he won back-to-back national championships. Had a little off-field incident since his celebration days, but I mean that happens. Well, with that, I don't think should count against him. But how does Stetson Bennett translate to an NFL quarterback?
I don't know. I just have a hard time counting this guy out anymore. He's got that intangible that these teams are supposedly looking for, and that's to win games.
Right.
And he has surely done a lot of that. He has won games all over the place. And, you think about, well, Georgia's good. Well, Georgia had never won a national championship in 40 years until Stetson Bennett IV got there. And that's just a fact. And even last year in 2021, where, he didn't have as good as a year statistically, he still threw 29 touchdowns and only 7 interceptions. And then this year, had a better year throwing the football, almost 70% completion. I think he's underrated a little bit. I like him better. I would much rather go with him than I would, Will Levis. I mean, you look at the body of work and you look at, just throwing the football. I think this kid's going to get a shot. Do I think he's going to get drafted in the first 2 rounds? No. But I think he's a 3rd or 4th round draft pick who's going to get a chance on a team somewhere.
All right. Then we got Jaron Hall. I'll just spend one quick moment on him. Jaron Hall, BYU, has the Zach Wilson failed experiment kind of tarnished the BYU reputation for turning out quarterbacks right now in the NFL, where this guy, people look at him with kind of a, I don't know, suspicious look as to whether that a BYU quarterback can do it anymore.
Well, I mean, I think the biggest thing with him was, this year, I thought he started off really, really well, and then the end of the season didn't go as great. But you look at the numbers, and he still put up some pretty damn good numbers. I mean, he threw for over 3,000 yards in 12 starts. He had 31 touchdowns against only 6 interceptions. So that I like. The last 2 years, he's played some football. He went down to the Senior Bowl, which I like to reward guys for. I think this guy, he's got a little bit more of a ceiling than some of these other guys. You know what I mean? Like I know he's a senior, or excuse me, whatever it is, 5th year junior, whatever the hell they call these guys. I don't even know what you call these dudes anymore. I mean,
Lifers.
He went to the Senior Bowl, but he wasn't even a senior. He was a junior, but he was a 5th year junior. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what you call him. But he has played some football, but I don't think he's fully developed. I think the ceiling is still out there somewhere. So I think he is one that kind of entices me a little bit more than some of these other guys.
And next, let's go on to TCU Max Duggan. I've liked this kid ever since I saw him 2 years ago. He's a leader. I don't know if his game will translate. He worries me that he is a better human being, but kind of a Johnny Manziel type guy. Where
he reminds me more of Tim Tebow.
Really?
I mean,
okay.
He really does. Just the way he played. I mean, you saw how he put TCU on his shoulders and led them to these amazing victories with his legs and throwing the ball. But you look at the throws he made and you look at the way their offense was constructed. And to me, it looked a lot like Urban Meyer's offense. It was a read option, kind of, one receiver out in the pattern, 2 receivers out in the pattern at most. As you mentioned, I agree with you. I'm not sure this guy's game translates. I like him. Unbelievable year. But if you look at, before this year, there wasn't a whole lot of good stuff on tape. And to be honest, he wasn't even really supposed to be the starter until he, inevitably won the job. And then kind of the magic started happening. But this guy, to me, is way more of a project than some of these other dudes. And I'm not sure his game translates. Now, like I said, I know some of these dudes are some of these teams are using these RPO guys and incorporating some of the college stuff, but not that much.
Yeah, and the bottom line is, we talk about projects, and in today's football, especially with the money these guys that is attached to the quarterback, you can't afford to take on a project, because these guys, if they make it through to their first contract, their next contract is huge.
Yeah, but the only good news is that with the rookie wage scale now, you can draft these quarterbacks even in the early rounds, and you're not tied to them forever. You don't have this huge capital attached to these dudes from day one. I mean, you think back to Sam Bradford getting $65 million. You think to Matt Stafford. You think of Jamarcus Russell getting $71 million. I mean, these guys, it was like you drafted them, and boom, if they don't work out, you're screwed for 4 or 5 years. That's not the same anymore. And especially now, even if you draft a guy in the first round, you're only giving them $23 million.
No, I agree, but the only thing is, you hope to get them to come in where your window will be open, and by the end of their first contract, you're really a viable competitor towards a Super Bowl. That's why the Jets now, they're kind of screwed because they're 2 years into the Zach Wilson situation, and now they have to go out and get a new quarterback. And they're not going to have to pay him, which is okay.
True.
But they're going to have
my whole point is, though, they drafted Zach Wilson, 2 overall, and they're going to draft somebody else now, or they're going to sign a free agent. Wow. So it's not, you rewind a couple of years, and if they had drafted Zach Wilson 2, they would have handed him $60-70 million, and they'd be stuck with him. Okay. Yeah. Not so anymore. I mean, they drafted him number 2. And now you can just, they need to just cut ties with them. I'd release him right now and move on. I've seen enough. I'm not sure if they are going to admit to that at this point. But if they're smart, they sign a veteran or they draft somebody right now and they move on from this kid because he's not good.
Sign a veteran backup.
Yeah, I would sign a veteran and I would draft someone if I was the Jets. That's what I would do.
Any of these other guys down here, Dorian Thompson Robinson from UCLA, Malik Cunningham from Louisville, Tanner McKee, Stanford, Jake Hayner from Fresno State, Tyson Bagant from Shepherd. Where the hell is Shepherd?
I believe that's a Division II school.
Okay.
And I thought that he was the guy that got the Senior Bowl invite. If I'm correct, it's a school. I believe it's a Division II school in West Virginia, and I don't know a ton about this dude. I got to be honest with you, but he is one of the most highly decorated Division II quarterbacks in a long time. So they'll find you. He's been a 4-year starter. He's got a pretty good frame. He's got good hand size. He's got a good release.
6'3", 210.
Yeah, he's a big dude. He's got a good arm, but I just got to be honest. I haven't seen him play a ton. I've watched tape of him, but I don't know enough about him to really tell you what to expect.
Wow, that's that would be a project to get him right there.
Yeah, out of those guys you mentioned, I would probably think the highest rated one is Tanner McKee. There's some people that are very, very high on that guy. I'm not one of them, but a lot of folks out there are, and they feel like he is a dude that could be a starter in this league. Obviously things didn't go as well as hoped at Stanford, but he's a dude who is 6'6", 230 pounds. He's got that big frame. And supposedly, he's supposed to be better than your boy Mills there in Houston. And he's supposed to be a guy that, has all of the intangibles to be a good quarterback in this league. I haven't seen it, as I didn't see him progress like he was supposed to from, year 1, 2, and 3. He actually got worse completion percentage wise from 2021 to 2022, and threw less touchdowns, but the talent at Stanford was not good. They just didn't have a great team. No. So looking at his numbers really doesn't tell the whole story. He definitely is a guy that has the skills to be a quarterback in the NFL, and I think he will probably get drafted on day 2.
Well, we'll see how it works out. And I want to skip over to wide receivers because this is huge for me as a Giant fan to see who they can maybe grab because they need wide receiving help in the worst possible way. And let's start out with your home. We got Jalen Hyatt as a number 1 rated guy here on grades. He's Tennessee. We got 2 guys from Tennessee. Well, why don't we do both of them right now? Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. Give me the scouting on these guys.
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt just had a unbelievable season. One of the greatest seasons in Tennessee football history from that position. It was just unbelievable. And then he did a lot of it in the biggest games. But when you look at him, 6 feet, 175. It's not prototypical size. Now wide receivers come in all shapes and sizes. That's for sure. But I don't know. Does this guy's game translate to the NFL like he did this year? He's kind of a one-hit wonder too. 2022 was his only year that he kind of blew up, and he had 60. He only had 67 catches, but he averaged almost 19 yards a catch. And this was this high flying, Josh Heupel offense. I mean, that's kind of what made this kid. And he had 15 touchdowns, which is a Tennessee record for a single season. He had, like I said, almost 1,300 yards. But the big thing with me was the big play potential, and almost 19 yards a catch. Somebody's going to take a chance on that guy because of that big play potential. And, I see him as a dude that can be a downfield kind of threat. He has that vertical speed. We're going to have to see what he runs. We're going to have to see what he runs in this combine. I mean, that's a big thing with these wide receivers is the running. And what we'll get into today, we'll talk a little bit about, who has run already because some of the defensive guys have already got their 40 times in. So we can look at those. But that's going to be the big thing with him. How does he test? What does he look like? And let's be honest, Jalen Hyatt benefited because Cedric Tillman got hurt. Cedric Tillman was the big dog on Tennessee's team. He was the big time wide receiver. He was the guy that everybody, kind of projected as being the big dude coming out this year. He had a big season last year with his 64 catches for 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. And then this year, he got hurt and he wasn't really able to come back. He only played in 6 games, and injury is probably going to be the biggest thing with him. I don't know if he'll even test here at the combine. I'm not sure. He kind of opted out at the end of the season and was really hampered by that injury. So, both those dudes can play now, but it's, the Tennessee effect, if you will, with that Josh Heupel offense. How does that translate into the NFL game? Well, speed translates. So if both these guys can run good times, somebody's going to take a flyer on them.
Well, and I think the wide receiver isn't as hamstrung by a high flying offense as the quarterback is. I mean, the wide receiver, if anything, it enhances his at least tape because they're going to get a lot more play on the tape, which is big.
My only thing is, I have these guys rated a little bit differently than the NFL does. So NFL's got Jalen Hyatt 1, Josh Downs 2, Quentin Johnson 3, Cedric Tillman 4, Jordan Addison 5, and so on and so forth. I don't have it that way. Number 1 for me is Quentin Johnson, this kid out of TCU. I mean, I don't know if you watched him play, but
only very briefly, mostly in the Georgia game, which of course doesn't give you a good look at it. But give me your scouting on him.
I mean, what do you want to know? This kid has it all. He's got the size. I mean, he's gonna measure out at around 6'4". He's over 215 pounds. He's got the stats. He's got the catchability, the radius. I don't know what the hell else you want this kid. This dude just can do everything. I mean, he's got the hands. He's got the size. He's got the length. He was able to, let's just be honest. He was their best weapon on their team. And yet he still was able to get open and catch passes throughout the season. So that's what I really liked about him. And that's what really impressed me with him was everybody knew that they were going to him. Everybody knew that he was their number 1 option. But it didn't really matter. He still was able to produce. And you just can't coach 6'4", 215. That's my thing. I mean, the only thing that worries me a little bit was he only had 6 touchdowns, but you know what? I'm not so sure that was on him.
No, that could be play calling.
Yeah. Well, they were running the ball a lot when they got down close. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and also he's going to be doubled down there, over anybody else. Now the guy went above him, who you passed by, but it's basically you're rated in a tie. But I could see why you kind of shied away from him. Josh Downs, 5'10".
Yeah, I mean, as I said, these guys all come in different shapes and sizes, and this guy's a lot different shape and size than Q. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a lot smaller. Now he does have some explosion, and let's be honest, he made that quarterback look pretty good this year down there. He had some good numbers. He had 94 catches, over 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. To me, in the NFL, he projects more as a slot guy.
Right.
But once again, slot guys can make a lot of money in this league and can make a lot of catches.
Ask Victor Cruz.
Yeah, no doubt. So I think he's a good player. I just don't have him rated as high as the other guys I mentioned. I like Jordan Addison better than I like Josh Downs just because of the production over time.
How about Tyler Scott at Cincinnati?
Yeah, I'm not as high on him as some of these other guys. I like Zay Flowers out of Boston College a little bit better. Zay Flowers is a guy that I kind of compare to Josh Downs size-wise. He's more of a slot dude that can get up and down the field vertically and also work the sidelines. To me, I like Jackson Smith and Jigba as well a little bit more than these guys. And A.T. Perry from Wake Forest, when you're talking about production, Jackson Smith and Jigba obviously – really didn't play this year.
Right.
And that's going to hurt him. This guy was a bona fide top 10 pick until he got hurt in the Notre Dame game and then never really came back. But he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's a good kid. He's got good production. But Tyler Scott suffered a little bit this year because of the quarterback position. They didn't have his boy Desmond Ridder there anymore. And
right.
He's another kid, like I said, he's about 5'10", 180 pounds. So he's a little bit different. They compare him to T.Y. Hilton. I don't know if he's that fast. We're going to see. It all comes down, some of these guys can shoot up the board if they can run a really fast 40 times. So we'll see if we can do that.
Well, and then we got, I don't know how to say, Boutte or Boot?
Kayshon Boutte.
Yeah.
One of the most gifted athletes in this entire draft. This year was, let's just be honest, man, this year was a just disaster for Kayshon. I mean, it was just bad. Last year he was killing it. He was having an unbelievable season, and then the injury came.
Right.
And it cut his season short. And we were all like, well, he'll be back next year. And then as we saw the quarterback position at LSU, he was basically a running back there.
Right.
Well, Kayshon came out right before the bowl game and he said, I'm coming back. And it kind of shocked everybody. But I was like, that's kind of a smart move. I like it. And then like 3 days later, he's like, no, I'm not playing in the bowl game and I'm going in the draft. And I'm like, wait, what? Who's giving this guy advice and why the hell are they letting him talk? Because not a great idea. He definitely has first round skills. But like I said, it's just the last couple of years, it hasn't been good for him. I mean, last year was just kind of a disaster. He finished with 48 catches, but he only had 2 touchdowns.
No.
And, a lot of that was on the quarterback, who was basically a running back.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing he's got going for him is the LSU reputation for turning out wide receivers.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was supposed to be the next guy. I mean, he was supposed to be the next Justin Jefferson. He was supposed to be the next Jamar Chase. A lot of guys down in Baton Rouge that covered the SEC thought he had better skills than both of them. But it just didn't pan out because of, like I said, 2021, the injury came about. Now, let's talk about it. He played the first 6 games. He had 38 catches for over 500 yards and 9 touchdowns in 6 games.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah. And then once he went down, LSU was done. Ed Orgeron got fired, and the rest is history. But, last year was just a big, big disappointment. He was healthy. He played, and, he was healthy and available to play, but he didn't even play in some of the games. When he did play, it was like he wasn't there. I thought he may transfer, honestly, at times throughout the season and certainly at the end of the year. But then he said he was coming back, and then he said he was going pro. I question not the character of the kid, but just some of his decision making has been questionable. Let's just say it that way.
All right, it's a long list there. So who do you like with the wide receiver so we can get into the times here?
The rest of the guys, like I said, the next one would definitely be A.T. Perry at Wake Forest. This guy had a just bang up career. He doesn't get talked about as much because he was at Wake Forest, but this is a dude who, put Wake Forest on the map. I mean, numbers galore. Last year, 71 catches, 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns. This year, more catches, 81, over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. You're talking about 2 years in a row, over 1,000 yards, over 70 catches, over double-digit touchdowns. This guy's got production all over him. I think he's going to be a probably second-round draft pick, and I think he's going to surprise a lot of people because some people just aren't talking about him because they didn't watch Wake Forest play that much. But you think about Sam Hartman, who's now worked himself into potentially being the starter for Notre Dame. Well, he can thank A.T. Perry for that because all he had to really do was throw it in that guy's direction. So I really like him. Some of the other guys on this list as we go down, Jaden Reed was at the Senior Bowl from Michigan State, kind of a bigger slot guy that I like. The position's very, very deep. But I mentioned the dudes that I really like. Ronnie Bell is another guy out of Michigan who was hampered by some injuries, but definitely has big play potential. And then the number one wide receiver coming out of high school a couple of years ago was Raheem Jarrett out of Maryland. Never really reached his full potential, at Maryland, but definitely has a big, big ceiling and is a guy that I think somebody's going to take a chance on probably in round 3.
Now, we know that the wide receiver is taking on an added importance in the NFL game. When you look at this group coming out, we know it's not a good quarterback draft, but since we're looking at the wide receivers right now, is it a good wide receiver draft or an average wide receiver draft overall, do you think?
A little bit better than average. I mean, we talked about the Biletnikoff winner, Jordan Addison. I mean, that guy, we haven't even talked about him yet.
Right.
And he was the best wide receiver in all of football. So, actually, Jalen Hyatt won it this year, but Jordan Addison won it last year at Pittsburgh and, had similar numbers this year at USC. So, that guy's really good. As we mentioned, I like Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt both, Josh Downs, Quentin Johnson, Zay Flowers. I like Jackson Smith. Boute's got potential, A.T. Perry. This is a draft where you can definitely fill some needs at wide receiver, but it's just not as deep as it has been. To be honest with you, probably the deepest position in this draft, in my opinion, is running back. Okay. I mean, you can get a running back late. I mean, I'm talking about 4th, 5th round. You can get a starter at running back. I mean, Deuce Vaughn, Chris Rodriguez from Kentucky, Tyon Evans from Louisville, Travis Dye from USC, Kendre Miller from TCU, Keaton Mitchell from East Carolina, Deuce Vaughn, Kenny McIntosh. I mean, Zach Charbonnet is probably my favorite, and Bijan Robinson's definitely the number 1 rated. But you've got the kid out of Pittsburgh. Running back's the deepest position in this draft.
Well, let's save that for next week because I want to get into that in depth. But let's get to you said about the times that have been posted already, and let's see what you got there for in the times.
Yeah, I mean, so far, Nolan Smith. This is the kid that was a big-time player at Georgia. He tore his pec this season. That was the only question with him was the injury. And he had a little bit of surgery, but they didn't end up having to repair as much. So the surgery wasn't as big a deal. And, you think about it, he only played in 8 games and he had 7 sacks. Right. So this is a kid who can produce. He had 8 sacks last year, even though he wasn't He was a starter, but they had so much talent and so much guys everywhere. It was kind of going to come down to how he performed. Well, let's just say it's been good. He ran a 4.3940 already. This guy, he's just, I mean, he can, the thing is that they list him as an edge player, but he really played the sand this year. So he's a guy that can play the run, but he has the ability to be a pass rusher. So Nolan Smith has definitely won the combine so far. That 40-yard dash is just absolutely unbelievable. He comes back in the vertical and jumps 41.5. So not only does he have the fastest 40 time of anyone who's run,
got some ups.
He's got the highest vertical of anyone who's jumped. And then, he did the broad jump. I think he finished fourth at 10.8, which is damn good. The number one so far is 11. So Nolan Smith is definitely the guy that's helped himself the most so far. Probably number two would be the guy who came in second in the 40, and that's Byron Young, right from here in Tennessee. An edge rusher who really came on this past year. He ran a 4.4340. That is faster than I thought he would run. I mean, the guy's a good athlete. Definitely had a really good season, but I didn't expect that. I mean, that's unbelievable. And then he had a 38-inch vertical. He had a 11-inch broad jump, which is number one of anyone who's gone so far. And this guy's the real deal. I mean, I thought he would probably help himself with his performance here at the combine because he's a good athlete. But did I think he would post numbers like this? No. He only really played 2 years at Tennessee. And, his numbers weren't eye-popping. I mean, he had 12 tackles for loss. He had 7 sacks in 2022. But, he's got himself probably a first or a second round grade now after posting these numbers.
Cool. Anybody else up there yet, or we got?
Yeah, we got a couple other guys. I mean, we talk about the 40 times. That's kind of what it all means for these edge rusher guys. And I've talked about this guy for years, and that's your boy Foskey from Notre Dame.
Right.
I like him. He's had a lot of production. I've seen him, make plays for years, and he helped himself today. He ran a 4.5840. He chose to run, which, that's a big thing with me is these guys that want to come out here and compete. I give them a lot of credit. They're not holding out for, going home and being somewhere where they feel comfortable. They're coming out here on the big stage. They're going against the best players in the country, and they're producing. And Foskey went out and ran a good time today. I'm proud of him. And KJ Henry ran a 4.6, not the fastest time in the world out of Clemson, but still one of the better times of the day. The biggest one was Khalije Cansey, is a kid, defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. He ran the fastest time for a defensive tackle in like 10 years. This is a kid, 6'1", 283, and he ran 4.640. So this kid really helped himself out today. 4.6740, and like I said, he is a big hunk of dude. So when you can be that fast and run that big, run that fast of a time, you're doing yourself pretty good. The other one that there's guys that are still running right now. So, we're getting these numbers pop up as we go. But Jeremy Banks didn't run the best 40 time, but the linebacker from Tennessee did help himself with the broad jump and the vertical jump. He looked pretty good and showed some athleticism. They did do something smart this year where they're doing the bench press last. Which is very smart, because I used to come out and do the bench press first. Then these guys would be blasted out the rest of the week and couldn't really do anything else. So that was huge. The other guy that really stood out to me is Lucas Van Ness, kid that played. They call him Hercules over at Iowa. He never really started at Iowa, yet he led the team in tackles for loss. And this is a kid who has all the intangibles. I believe he is now 6'5", 272. That's a big edge rusher. He's only a redshirt sophomore, so he's going to get He's going to grow, and he's registered out with 34-inch arms, 11-inch hands. And the big thing is he ran a 4.5840. So that's big time. And also posted a 31-inch vertical jump, 9.10 broad jump. This kid from Iowa had himself a day. And then, of course, the best linebacker in all of football, Campbell. The linebacker from Iowa, Jack Campbell, he ran a 4.7140. Not the greatest time in the world, but he's a kid that can play football, and he's not known for his speed, but he definitely makes up for it. Instincts. And then he did post a 37.5-inch vertical and a 10.8 broad jump, so showed some athleticism.
Yeah, I mean, the linebacker position, I mean, it's great when you can be the fastest guy in the field, but the biggest thing is instincts to be where the ball is. And, if you know how to do that, that makes up for the lack of speed.
There's no doubt. And like I said, the biggest winners so far are Nolan Smith, who posted that 4.39. Byron Young, the kid out of Tennessee, who only played 2 years, of football, but he's 6'3", he's about 245. And then, he ran that time today, and, he moved up on people's draft boards just with that 4.43 time. I didn't expect him to run that fast.
All right, we're going to save the rest of the combine for next week, including the running backs and that stuff. One thing I wanted to get into a little college basketball, back to college basketball. We began this show tonight because Mike Bray is leaving Notre Dame. Not a great season, 12-19, I think is their record right now, or something like that. Overall, what is your impression of Mike Bray as the Notre Dame coach? I think he gets a lot of the Brian Kelly cloud because he never won anything. But I mean, Notre Dame isn't known for winning national championships in basketball. But no Final Fours. Had a couple of good tournament runs. Produced some decent players, not great players. Overall, Mike Bray, what do you think about him at Notre Dame? And the other thing I want to talk to you about is it looks like we know Notre Dame's job is going to be open. It looks like Georgetown's probably going to be open. And it looks like St. John's, which is probably the least attractive of the jobs, just because, it's St. John's, and this is a NBA, not an NCAA end of the country to be a head coach in. First on, what do you think about Bray and those three jobs being potentially opened?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the production at Notre Dame has dropped off in the last few years. I mean, the last time they made it to the tournament, I believe, was 2017. So I'm not surprised that he chose to step away. But when I think about him, I always think back to the 2007-2008 season where he led the Irish to 24-6. He was named Big East Coach of the Year for the second year in a row. He had Notre Dame on a 45-game home winning streak, and he kind of sat on that. I mean, he signed that in 2012. He's still, kind of living off of those 2 years there, and he signed a 10-year extension that went up until 2022, and he's kind of been sitting on that. So, he had a decent year in 2014, 2015. I think they went 32-6. They won the ACC conference tournament. That was a good team. They made it to the Elite Eight, but then didn't get over the hump. But I do think this is a guy who's second all time in Notre Dame's win list behind only Digger Phelps. So I look at him as a good coach. I mean, this is a dude who learned under Coach K. He was an assistant at Duke from 87 to 95. He was an assistant at the prestigious DeMatha High School in Maryland before that. Played at Northwestern State and George Washington. He just kind of sends basketball through your spine when you mention his name. And I got to meet him several times at the Nike coaches clinics, and definitely won the college basketball coach of the year a couple of times, 2011, I believe. And is a good guy. So not only is he a good basketball coach, but a good guy. I think it's probably time for him to hang it up, and I could see him potentially being on TV and doing commentating after this.
So what do you think about? I mean, always as long as he's down there, Patino's name's going to come. I know they're already trying to link him to Georgetown and St. John's because he got that favorable ruling about the stuff that went on at Louisville, and they think he's not as radioactive as he used to be. And of course, you see what he's doing at Iona already. I mean, it took him 1 year to turn. Well, Tim Clouston was not doing a bad job when he took over. So I mean, he had an okay program, but he did bring a little bit more attention to Iona. It would be so Rick to leave, saying this was going to be his last stop, as he said everywhere else he's been. But what do you think about Rick Pitino potential for any of those jobs?
You know, Rick is 70 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I that's the big thing with me. I could honestly see Iona being his last stop because he's 70,
Right.
and you know, he's had some health issues. I could see him staying put, and
I would love to see him stay put.
I could see it. I could see it. I know that hasn't really been his thing before that,
Right.
but you know, I could see him. I could see him staying put. I mean, think about it. He was at Louisville for 16 years. It's not like he just jumps around to jump around. I mean, he was at Kentucky for a nice little stretch. You know, like I said, he was at Louisville for a long time. I don't know if somebody's going to fork out the money that it would take to get him to come into town when he's 70 years old. Now, saying that, Rick Barnes is no spring chicken.
Right.
And he got hired here at Tennessee, and there were some people that didn't like it. And let me tell you, everybody likes it now because he's done nothing but come in and win. So, you know, although I think it's my feeling he probably won't be number one on the list for these jobs, it wouldn't shock me if he did get hired at one of them. I could see him possibly going to like a St. John's more than Notre Dame or Georgetown if it becomes available, because I see those two schools as wanting a guy that's going to be there long term. Now St. John's, I could see them thinking a little bit shorter term, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and the other thing about Sage, I mean, I know I don't know Rick personally, but from what I know about him, I know he loves the ponies. He owns like racehorses.
Yep.
So this kind of area with Belmont and all the other stuff that's around here for his ponies, he gets the best of both worlds. Plus, Saratoga is only an hour up the road if you want to go see some horse racing. So I can see him sitting in the Northeast for that reason alone. If he owns horses and also wants to coach basketball, it's a perfect situation for him. So,
yeah, and we'll see, you know, how many jobs become open because there's going to be more people fired. You know, there's no doubt. You know, I don't know exactly how many jobs will become available. The Ole Miss job has already come open. You know, I gotta believe that Kelvin Sampson has to be number one on a lot of these lists. I mean, do you not agree with me?
no, I don't disagree with you. I don't see Notre Dame taking a chance on Kelvin Sampson just because he has that black mark from the past, even though he may not have been guilty of it. And in today's world, it would be no problem. I don't see them going for him. I could see Georgetown.
I mean, his big allegations where he sent text messages. I mean,
yeah.
Who gives a shit? I mean,
I know.
I mean, I just don't care. I mean, look at the guy. I know he's had more than that, but
he got caught. Everybody else was doing it. He got caught.
I mean, this guy has won everywhere he's ever been.
Well, he deserves it. He deserves a shot. That's for sure. There's no two ways about it.
And he was 32-6 at Houston last year, and nobody, really talked about him that much. Hell, they went to the Final Four the year before, and were 28-4. In 2018, 2019, they were 33-4 and made it to the Sweet 16. I mean, this is a guy who just knows how to coach basketball. B, he knows how to coach tournament basketball. If you want a guy who can win games, get you to the tournament, win games in the tournament, Kelvin Sampson would be my number one. Now, he is also not that young either. I mean,
no.
I think he'll be. I think he turned 68 this year, but he seems to still have a lot of fire. He still seems to connect with these kids, and like I said, he's still winning at a tremendous clip.
And then one thing before we go off the air, I want to, Shaka Smart up in Marquette. I mean, he does wonders in these small college town programs. Not so much at Texas, but I mean, he flourished at VCU. He's flourishing at Marquette. Do you think he would I know it's early for him. He just got to Marquette. But do you think he would getting back to a huge program, or do you think he's one of the guys who says, "No, I'm going to stay where I can coach my way, have my way, be in a smaller town, and own the town"? What do you think?
If he's smart, I think he stays put. I
I
mean,
do.
let's be honest. I mean, VCU is where he built his tenure, and then he goes to Texas and replaces Rick Barnes, and everybody expected him to win the national championship because that was the one thing that Rick Barnes couldn't do. So
Right.
that's what he was kind of hired for, and it's not like he fell on his face. I mean,
No.
things didn't go as well as hoped. But it wasn't horrible. He was 109 and 86, 51 and 56 in the Big 12. That's not great, but it's not horrible. But look what he's doing at Marquette this year: 24 and 6, 16 and 3. He's number one in the Big East. I think if he's smart, and let's be honest, Marquette's a good basketball school.
Oh, I know. I go back. I rooted for
Al McGuire.
McGuire.
I mean, they got big time history. I think. I think he stays put. Marquette's got a big time history. They'll pay him money. I mean,
Yeah.
they'll open up the checkbook. So I think if he's smart, he stays right there.
Yeah, because that's really their revenue. That's their sports revenue is their basketball team. That's where they get all their money from. So you got to keep him in house.
Yeah,
And I tell you, I love a basketball school like that, a small, like you said, legendary with Al McGuire. I love when the guys stick around there. I hate when those guys get plucked, and then that university goes back to step one again. It just sucks. So, all right, let's wrap it up. Are you gonna be doing anything this Sunday, or what are you gonna do?
I'm not sure yet, but we're gonna have our show. We didn't do it last week, so we're still kind of working on it, trying to get things finalized to get back out there and get our college football stuff going with all the things that are happening right now with the combine, breaking that down, the Senior Bowl that just finished up, and then also the movement in the college football world. We already had the last signing day, and we need to get in and break that down. So it'll either be this Sunday or next Sunday that we have our first real man coverage show of the year where we bust all that down.
And we will talk about March Madness next week as well, too. We'll start getting into March Madness. We'll get into the combine. So we will be back to talk about that. Everybody enjoy your weekend. I hear we're getting storms throughout the country, so try and stay dry. Try not to be out in the snow if you get that. And I hear we're going to have wind all over the place. So, be able to duck that. So,
yeah, they've canceled school here in Knoxville, Tennessee, actually in Knox County, which is the entire county surrounding Knoxville, because of potential flooding and winds for tomorrow. So button down the hatches.
And then one thing I want to say, up around here, we had a snowstorm on Monday, and they canceled school. But I heard rumors that they made the kids go remotely. And I said, that's a screw-in. If the snow is canceled, let the kids stay home. Let them have their day off.
Yeah, no doubt. If you can't make it to school, then let them enjoy themselves.
Exactly. What I mean? They don't have many of that. So everybody have a great weekend. We'll be back next week. Nate, enjoy the weekend, and I'll see you next week.
Sounds good, brother.